Well, thanks so much. Everyone, welcome back to campus. It's great to have everybody here. My name is Stuart DeQ. I'm the program director at the Yale Center for Business and the Environment. And today we're launching the first in a 6-part series, Colloquium in Sustainability Marketing. And this series is really unique for a number of perspectives, which I'll walk through, describe sort of the general overview of the series. I'm going to introduce an alum and a sponsor of the program, and then we're going to get into an introduction of our moderator, who's going to introduce our featured guests for today's talk. The Colloquium in Sustainability Marketing at Yale, sponsored by DECRA, aims to unravel and address the challenges of creating environmentally sustainable products, services, brands that customers love. This will be a 6-part series throughout the year exploring multiple perspectives from leading brands that are driving this conversation forward. In recent years, there has been an explosion of interest in building brands through green or cause-based marketing. Given the current noise and plethora of marketing approaches, the claim that a product is more sustainable is being critically evaluated. Brands making green claims are being forced to address significant environmental aspects across their life cycle. Despite all this recent activity, in order to achieve a substantial impact, products that are more environmentally sustainable need to be able to reach an even wider audience and gain even more market share. Now, this area of focus is one which is new to our center and new to the Center for Customer Insights. So this speaker series is a joint partnership between the Yale Center for Business and the Environment and the Yale Center for Customer Insights. And a lot of the best things around here happen when a couple of factors come together. And really that's student initiative pushing us forward to do different interesting things, and alumni coming back to the program or to the, coming back to the school and saying, I can support this, I can help, I can be a part of this both creatively and in other ways. And so that really came together within this series. So there are a couple of people I want to thank before we get started. First is a student who really came to us and has pushed this for the last year and a half, currently a second-year joint degree student between the Yale School of Management and the Yale School of Forestry, Marissa Galizia. Marissa, for those of you, online, you get to see Marissa at a later talk, I'm sure, up here announcing. And for everyone in the audience here, she really spent a lot of time creatively thinking this through, pulling together the resources and making this happen on campus. And so it's a real testament to her organizational skills and ingenuity. Anastasia O'Rourke, who is a PhD graduate of the Yale School of Forestry and Environmental Studies, at the same time came to us and was really interested in creating, co-creating, and really being able to develop a new initiative on campus. Anastasia is a principal at DECRA. She'll describe a little bit more of what they do. But Anastasia is the best type of alum that we can offer to the world. Somebody who's interested in implementing creative solutions out in the business world, and then also really interested in exploring the underpinnings of how things work in business and the environment and where we can make an impact here at Yale. So she's really brought an incredible amount of thought and creativity and input into this series. And we're just thrilled to have DECRA as a sponsor. So Anastasia, you'd like to say a few words?
Hi everyone, I won't take up too much time. Thank you for the intro, Stuart. So DECRA, we are a global company in 50 different countries across a range of professional services. I'm in the consulting advisory group, and for starting and working on building up our North American sustainability consulting practice, a lot of what we do is on product sustainability. And so that's why our interest is in this series, and especially in hearing from leading companies like Johnson & Johnson. And we're just thrilled to have you here, really happy to be back, and great kickoff to the series, I think. So enjoy.
So with that, I'm going to introduce our moderator for today's discussion. The nice thing, again, about all these factors coming together is then being able to bring faculty expertise to a discussion. And George Newman is an assistant professor of organizational behavior at the Yale School of Management. George is interested in the application of basic cognitive processes such as categorization, causal reasoning to consumer behavior. And also, specifically, he's interested in pro-social behaviors such as charitable giving and purchasing environmentally friendly products, and how consumers may balance their desires to do good with desires to maximize the efficiency of their donations and purchases. And George really has been somebody who, as a student, I was actually even able to collaborate with at the Yale School of Management, and has always been really generous with his time to students and people interested in this space, and has a number of research projects ongoing with the Center for Business and the Environment. We're thrilled to have George as a moderator, and I'll pass it off to him.
Great. Thanks very much, Stuart. Everybody can hear me all right? Yes? Okay. First, I'd like to just introduce our speakers today. So we're pleased and honored to have Iannuzzi. He's the Senior Director for the Environment, Health, and Sustainability at Johnson & Johnson. He recently published a book, Greener Products, The Making and Marketing of Sustainable Brands. So please join me in welcoming Al. And our second speaker is Keith Sutter, who's the Senior Product Director for Sustainable Brand Management at Johnson & Johnson. So please join me in welcoming Keith. And then also just as a way of thank you, again, to thank Stuart DeGrew from Yale Center for Business and the Environment, Anastasia O'Rourke from DECRA, and Heather Fitzgerald from YCCI for helping to put this series together. So please join me in thanking them as well. Okay, so I think we're going to have a really fun discussion today. And to kick things off, actually, just as a way of a roadmap here, maybe we'd spend, I think we've got about an hour or so, maybe a little less now. So spend about 30, 40 minutes with a kind of more structured discussion, and then turn it over to questions from you. So around 12:30, I'd like to maybe field questions from the audience. And if I am lapsed in time, please just stick your hand up in the air, and we can talk about it then. Okay, so I thought just to kick things off, we could have both Al and Keith just tell us a little bit about their backgrounds, how they came to Johnson & Johnson, and about the kind of work that they're doing there now. So Al, do you want to go first?
Yeah, sure. First of all, I just want to thank Yale and thank DECRA for the opportunity to be here. It's a great turnout. Look forward to having an interesting discussion with all of you. First, I'd just like to introduce who Johnson & Johnson is as a company, and I'll give you a little bit about my background. So many of you, unless you did some research on already, might think of Johnson & Johnson as a consumer products company. But that is what we're most well known for, but that's actually our smallest sector. We have three key sectors. So consumer products, which has some great brands, Johnson & Johnson products, baby products, Band-Aids, Neutrogena, Clean and Clear, Benadryl, Tylenol, Motrin, those type of brands are part of our consumer products portfolio with a whole bunch of others. Our largest sector is actually medical device and diagnostics, where we make anything from large blood analyzers that are used in hospitals to knees and hips, replacement knees and hips, cardiology equipment, videoscopic surgery equipment, blood glucose monitor, so a whole host of different types of products there. And then our second largest, not by much, is our pharmaceutical sector, and a whole host of prescription drugs, oncology, pain management, psychological drugs, a whole bunch of different drugs. So that's who the company is. Our sales are approximately $70 billion, so we're huge. We have over 250 operating companies, and we operate as a decentralized company too. When we had some discussions earlier saying how complicated that could be, but I'm sure we'll get some questions about that. Now, a little bit about my background. So I've been working for Johnson & Johnson for 29 years. I started out my career as in environmental. Basically, all my background is science and environment. So out of a school in New Jersey, Stockton State University, some of you may have heard of, I was recruited to work for the New Jersey Department of Environmental Protection. And that's how I got my role. Though initially I wanted to be a forest ranger. I was saying the Yale School of Forestry is a very interesting place to be, but I was told there was no jobs in forestry, so hey, why don't you pursue pollution control? I said, sounds good to me, and then it kind of worked out. I got a job working for New Jersey DEP. I kind of got frustrated with state government and bureaucracy, and I happened to get an opportunity to go to one of Johnson & Johnson divisions called Ethicon Inc., which is the world's largest suture manufacturing facility, along with a whole bunch of other products now too. That's our main brand. And then I left the company for a year as an environmental consultant, so I got some experience, you know, can relate, Anastasia, to your environment a little bit. But then I was asked to come to corporate headquarters, and I've been at corporate headquarters ever since 1995, and I've worked in various positions, auditing our sites all around the world, so I've been on just about every continent doing environmental audits. I started our Design for the Environment program back in 1999, and now I'm fully into the product side. So I'm responsible for the Earthwards process, which is our process to make our products greener or more sustainable. That covers all three of our sectors. And for green marketing, which is Keith's role. He's our main green marketer within our company. He's responsible for that, spurring that kind of thinking throughout all of our brand teams. So that's pretty much where I'm at, and that's pretty much, you know, in a nutshell, what my background is.
Thank you, Al. I also would like to thank everybody and Yale the opportunity to come here and to have a good conversation today. Really appreciate it. By way of background, I joined J&J just about 11 years ago. I started as a brand marketer right out of school and worked on one of our most iconic brands, Band-Aid. So I started on Band-Aid brand and then worked for the next 8 years within our consumer products sector on a range of products, everything from a lot of them that Al mentioned, Neutrogena, some of our other wound care businesses, and including some products at McNeil. And took a small break from J&J also, but came back just over 2 years ago in this role at our corporate function to head up sustainability, marketing, and Earthwards, which is our process for making and marketing greener products. So with my background in marketing and brand management, I was able to leverage that, the connections I had within the organization across J&J to help to understand from a marketing perspective and more of a commercial aspect, how do you translate some of the things that's going on from an R&D and technical side into benefits that our customers and consumers really care about. So I like that work. I love my opportunity to work across all three sectors and across the enterprise and to see the kind of magnitude working for a large organization like Johnson & Johnson provides. So thank you again for having me and look forward to a good conversation today.
Great. You both mentioned the Earthwards program. I wondered, Keith, if you maybe wanted just to give us a better sense of what that is. You know, what are some of the goals and targets for that program at Johnson & Johnson?
Sure. So provide just a brief overview, and Al will fill any gaps that I might leave. But back in 2009, the program Al referenced, the Design for the Environment program, there was a desire, Al and other people within the organization, I hadn't yet joined this group, to pull some of that together and to brand it, to create one singular program where all of these elements could reside. And the output of that exercise was the Earthwards process. And Earthwards is, at its heart, it's life cycle thinking at our product level. So how do we think about the impacts that our products have across all of their life cycles, and how do we improve them? It starts with, and it has to be flexible enough, right, to work on Band-Aids and blood analyzers. So it's not about a set hurdle rate, it's about continuous improvement. How do we show progress that we're, for both our customers, consumers, and internally within the organization, that we're making our products better, they're having less of an impact across a range of attribute areas. So what Earthwards has 4 steps. First step is compliance and just understanding what's in our product. For some of our consumer products, that's quite an easy exercise. You look at the bill of materials. For some of them, from medical devices, it can be quite complex because you've got components coming from hundreds, if not thousands, of vendors. And how do you understand all the different components that are going into that? So it can be a rather difficult conversation or question to answer sometimes. Next step is that life cycle screening. So we like to try to educate all of our constituents across the enterprise on where the impacts are that are happening. Because too often our focus is on what's happening within our facilities, what's happening within J&J's factories, what's driving cost of goods. But ultimately, the impacts, as I'm sure many people in the room know, for a lot of our products happen outside of our walls. It's either the sourcing, if it's an agriculturally based product, or it could be in use. Like a blood analyzer machine has a lifespan of almost 10 years and uses electricity and water and creates waste for essentially operating 24/7 in a hospital environment for 10 years. You improve the electrical efficiency of that product by 15%, you potentially save that hospital thousands of dollars over the life cycle of that product. And it's a huge impact area. And that's not something that a lot of our brand marketers or our commercial leaders think about. So we educate them on that. Step 3 is identifying improvements. So we have 7 categories where we measure improvements: materials, waste, water, packaging, social, innovation, and energy. Yes. We're calling them from memory, but it wasn't too bad. I only needed help on one. So. And then what we look for 3 substantial improvements. So we consider for most of those to be a 10% or better. So for energy, for waste, we're able to reduce the impacts that product's having by 10%. And we think that for most of our products is a pretty substantial improvement when you're looking, again, at the scale and the size of most of our businesses. And the last step in the process is validation. So if the team has identified 3 improvements, 3 substantial improvements, they pull together the data to substantiate that, they put together a presentation, and they present to an internal and external board that reviews that. So there's a group of people from within the company, experts on legal, marketing, product stewardship, as well as external board members from World Wildlife Fund, other NGOs, to keep us honest in the process. If that board says, yep, we agree with your findings, we agree with your data, that product becomes Earthwards recognized. And we have a goal as an organization to have 60 products across the enterprise receive that recognition by 2015. We're currently at 44, representing, Al said, mentioned we're about a $70 billion company. It's over $4 billion in total sales of products that have received Earthwards recognition. So that's an overview. I don't know, George, does that hit the highlights? Al, did I miss anything? Or?
That's great.
All right.
Oh, yeah, that was great. I mean, maybe Al, you can speak a little bit to just what were some of Johnson & Johnson's motivations into starting a program like this?
Yeah, so it's a couple. So I mentioned that, and Keith mentioned this too, that we started the Design for the Environment program back in 1999, and we rolled it out globally, and we had one tool that we used across all 3 businesses. Over time, we realized that there wasn't one size fits all, and we needed to have various tools depending on the type of products that we were selling. So that also, with the advent of more competition, bringing greener products to market, and wanting to be able to better communicate the greener attributes of our products to our customers, those 2 forces coming together, and Johnson & Johnson being a marketing company, you got to have something with some panache to it in order for people to pay attention to it internally too, as well as externally for your customers. So we partnered with a firm, a consulting firm, to look at what other companies were doing, what our customers were looking at, and then we came up with the concept for Earthwards, and with a scorecard and a whole process of how to make more sustainable products and also how to market it. So it's really got those 2 components to it. It's not just a tool. It also is one of our objectives is to be able to bring scientifically based green marketing claims to our customers. So we wanted a way to kind of combat greenwashing as well, so that when we do bring statements to our customers, that it's really got some science behind it, and it's gone through a robust review, as Keith detailed, through our review process.
That's great. Yeah, so I mean, maybe just sticking with that question, I think one of the challenges is in this area is measuring, the efforts of that type of green marketing. How does Johnson & Johnson, review those figures? What kinds of data figure into, counting something as a win in this space?
Sure. So one of the things that we've recently started doing is understanding the claims that come out of the Earthwards process. How often are they utilized? So there's a lot of components for a marketing mix model, right? So whether it's green marketing, the sustainable attributes, there's a lot of different elements that go into our customer's decision, whether it's a consumer or a hospital, into purchasing a product. And sustainability is more important for some, less important for less important to others. But what we've seen is that if the marketers are seeing value, then they're spending money to support and to use those claims publicly. And if they're not using them, that means they're not seeing value. So our marketers are sort of our barometer. If they're dedicating hard-won advertising or packaging space to those claims, that means it's having an impact on their business. So they're sort of our barometer. And we've seen our utilization rate of claims, because we continue to find ways to partner with that commercial organization better, go from about 30% when we launched to now upwards over 70%. So we're seeing a substantial improvement in terms of the utilization rate of those claims coming out of the Earthwards process.
And is that something that Johnson & Johnson is also doing internal research on to kind of say, well, how much are these types of claims factoring into individual consumer decisions?
Yeah, so actually I think one of the handouts that Al had put out on the table, we sponsored a research study last year that looked globally at hospitals and their decisions in purchasing more environmentally preferred products, EPP processes. What we found is that there's about 20% of customers out there here in the US that are using EPP criteria to make purchasing decisions. It's a contributing factor. If you have a cardiac stent that has superior efficacy, that's going to win the day, right? Clear product benefits. But if you have products that are minimally differentiated and you have one that has removed latex or removed PVC or removed a material of concern or is a more sustainable packaging, you have an opportunity to get an advantage in the marketplace. And that's something that we've actually created a valuation model within our MD&D business to understand what are the risks and benefits of not investing in developing more sustainable products. So we're starting to value that and have those conversations with the finance partners on if we invest in removing a material of concern or reducing packaging, there's an investment on the business to do that, but the claim that comes out of that potentially results in significant market share gains. So there's always a complex answer, but again, if the marketers are making the decision to use the claims, to me that's a clear indication that it's moving the business because that space is, you're paying for it. So it's a finite resource.
Right. Maybe just to follow up there, you had both mentioned the medical industry, the B2B business as being actually a larger segment of Johnson & Johnson's business. I wondered if you could talk about how that B2B business differs maybe from the consumer product size and some of the different considerations that might go into that.
Yeah, sure. First, I'd like to let you know that the survey or the research that we did is available online. We have an external-facing website for Earthwards, so if you put in your browser www.earthwards.com, you can get to our external-facing website. You can learn more about Earthwards, but that research report is there. You can download that research report, and there's some other examples, and there's some stories that have been written about Earthwards if you wanted to get a deeper dive. So B2B marketing, it's interesting. In my book, I do a whole section on B2B marketing, and if you really think about the impact a corporation can have, and I know a lot of you in the audience are, some of you you're here because you want to make a difference with work, and we're seeing this more and more. People are, mission-centered. I don't want to just get a job and get paid for it. Yeah, sure, I want to get paid, but I want to do something that's meaningful with my life, right? So we're seeing more and more people who are interested in these type of things, and we're seeing now a pull in the marketplace. So one of the biggest drivers, there's a lot of drivers for bringing greener products to market and to be thinking about this type of stuff. And if you look at society right now, there's a finite amount of resources. We're going to see more resource constraint as the middle class grows in India and China. Where are all the raw materials going to come from, right? So we're going to see more of a competition for that and more of a struggle to get that, and the cost probably coming up. So we're going to have to do things differently from a product development standpoint. But the power of a corporation to do good is tremendous. So if you look at a company like Johnson & Johnson, or you take other major companies like Procter & Gamble, Unilever, we all have major sustainability initiatives. And if you think about our supply chain, like Keith alluded to, one of our devices, you could have thousands of parts. And think about where all those thousands of parts come, and all the different companies that are involved in providing to that part, which goes into a greater, part. If we can get our supply chain to start thinking more sustainable manner, start doing the type of things that we're trying to do with Earthwards, life cycle thinking, reducing the impacts throughout the supply chain, we could do a tremendous good. And to me, the greatest force of companies initiating sustainability programs is not government. A lot of people think, like the old mindset, when I went for environmental science back in the 80s when I got my degree, it was all, government regulation that was driving things. Well, government regulation is like at the bottom of the list. I mean, it's important, don't get me wrong, but it's really market drivers that are creating these things, and this ties into the whole B2B thing. So who's our largest customer? Our largest customer in the world is Walmart. So if you look at Walmart, I'm sure anybody who's looked at sustainability at all, they're just by, Walmart speaks, people listen, it's like the old E.F. Hutton commercial. And we are, if we're interested in meeting our customers' demands, we're going to, pay attention to what they say. And they've put out these sustainability goals, just like we have too, and we have goals on our suppliers. So our key suppliers, we're asking them to adopt sustainability goals. We're asking them to report in the carbon disclosure project. So, if you want to get an edge to sell products to another company, this is one of the ways to get an edge. And we're seeing more and more companies, they have scorecards on choosing who are their most preferred providers. And in a B2B context, you could potentially, get an edge over your competition by having better sustainability benefits of your product, or be able to help your customer meet their sustainability goals.
That's great. I wondered, actually, you mentioned your book. If you could talk about some other companies that you think are kind of getting this right in this space, and have similar types of initiatives.
Yeah. So in my book, I have about 25 case studies. I really love to look at what other companies are doing. And the way that I came to want to write this book is because we did a lot of benchmarking of other companies. That's how you learn. You look at your competition, you look at companies in other sectors. And to me, like if I look at like the gold-plated program when it comes to making and marketing sustainable brands, I look at GE Eco Imagination. I mean, everybody in this room has probably seen something about GE Eco Imagination, a commercial or something in print media. They did a really great job in that. And if you look at like some companies you might not think about, like how could a chemical company? So one of the companies that I did a review on is BASF, a German-based chemical company. They have a whole really good, robust green marketing program. They're selling materials to other companies, and they're using sustainability as a differentiator. Likewise, DuPont is also. So I'm trying to shy away from some of the consumer product ones, but the ones that we were talking about before, the ones that you typically, who do you think of when you think of the greenest companies? You typically like seventh generation or Method, and they're doing a great job with this too. I mean, to have the mantra of your company, think about your impacts to the seventh generation. You can't get much more sustainable thinking than that out there. So those are some of the companies, when I look at benchmarking that I think of, but I've got a whole host from a whole bunch of different sectors in the book that you can learn from anybody, and there's a lot of green marketing going on and a lot of greener product development going on out there.
You mentioned a lot of different companies that seem like they're making improvements in a lot of different areas. I wonder, Keith, if you could speak to the following. So Dan Esty here at the Forestry School has talked about how consumers tend to only kind of look at things in their immediate sphere, focus more on maybe packaging and disposal, less on material sourcing and transportation. So I wonder, from kind of a brand management side, a marketing side, how you guys think about maybe communicating some of those other types of benefits.
Right. Yeah. So what I'll say is sometimes it is challenging because a number of our products, as we go through that life cycle assessment, what we've seen through the Earthwards process is that almost every product makes improvements on packaging, especially the consumer products. Why? Even though it might be a low impact area for many of our products, it's the one that the consumer cares most about because it's the last thing they see when your product is empty, is where does it go? AccuView is a great example. It's technically MD&D, but it's a pretty consumerized brand. One a day. One of the biggest issues that a lot of consumers have is, why can't I recycle my AccuView package? Those AccuView packages, by the way, they're like teeny tiny. Even if you stack up 365 of them, it's still not that much of an impact in the aggregate. But from a consumer perception standpoint, it is that immediate sphere. That's where I think some of the conversations on, it's challenging in the consumer space, but that's where the B2B conversations, where we can have them at a deeper level. You have those more in-depth conversations with hospitals who are making decisions through RFP processes, through supplier-driven decisions. that's where we can have a deeper conversation around, what happens not just in that immediate sphere, but what are the impacts for us reducing packaging on trucking for Walmart. It's not just trucking for us, but it's also through their supply chain and impacting store shelf, stock out rates, that sort of things. So I don't know, hopefully that gets to the question, is that sometimes you can't. Sometimes you have to just focus on what they're going to gravitate towards, and that is, from the consumer perspective, often what's within their immediate sphere.
No, yeah, but I think it's a great point, because sometimes we don't focus on the B2B business and playing a very necessary role there.
Right.
So there's a lot going on, even with like the Earthwards campaign, and I wondered maybe, Al, if you could speak to how, from an organizational perspective, you're able to advance a campaign like that in a company as large as Johnson & Johnson. What are maybe some of the challenges there?
Yeah, it's not easy. We were talking a little before the session, and J&J is decentralized management. So we have multiple companies, multiple boards. So how do you do that? We're kind of fortunate, like in our department, we have very robust sustainability programs because it's kind of ingrained in our credo, the Johnson & Johnson credo. It actually says in our credo, which we pay a lot of attention to. Matter of fact, I was just at a meeting last week where we had a whole session just on our credo for our top leaders in our organization. It says that we should protect the natural resources which we're privileged to use. So that's part of our culture. So we have that, and we've been collecting data and doing reporting on sustainability since the early 90s. As a matter of fact, our first publicly facing, you could categorize it as a sustainability goal, was in 1986, which was to reduce toxic chemical emissions. And our first sustainability report was published, I believe, in 1993. So we've had an infrastructure to collect data, to get business units to report, and to be able to show what the enterprise impact is and all the things that we're doing, both good and challenges too. So we have, knowing that was in there, one of the ways that we tried to get the Earthwards process is that we embedded it into our sustainability goals. So right now we're on a business rhythm of every 5 years we come up with new sustainability goals. Our current set of goals is Healthy Future 2015. So like all major companies, you could go to our website and you could download that sustainability report. And one of our goals, as Keith mentions, is to have 60 Earthwards recognized products by the end of that goal period, which is 2015. So that's ingraining or embedding it into business processes, like our sustainability goals, is one. But that's not enough. I mean, Keith is, one of the smartest moves we ever did was hiring Keith on our staff, because having marketing, you have to market internally and externally. A lot of times you only think that marketers are helpful in selling your brand, but internally you have to convince the brands, and we have to develop case studies. We have to show them why the Earthwards process is meaningful, how this can benefit. And the brand teams, I mean, they're so busy, they can't really focus on these things. You would think that it's second nature for them, but sometimes they're not even listening to the right channels on where sustainability is coming. Like if you look at our hospital customers, they were focusing on like the physician. The physician's like at the lowest end of our spectrum is interested in sustainability, but now we're seeing more institutional purchasing, and the material manager, the purchasing groups, they're the ones who are more interested in sustainability, what it could do. So you have to like build the business case externally, you have to market it internally, you have to embed it into business processes. There's a whole mess of things, and even Keith has done some pretty good work in trying to get even through our intranet website and making that more meaningful and driving more traffic to that, and doing like social media internal to our company as well as external. So there's a whole mess of things that I'm just barely scratching the surface on it that you have to do in a company like ours to get it. Earthwards is quite different than, let's say, GE Eco Imagination. You can hear Jeff Immelt, the CEO of GE, speak about Eco Imagination. It started with, it was his idea. It's a lot easier to get something done. The CEO says, "Thou shalt, do Eco Imagination." You say, "Yes, sir, boss," and let's start working on this stuff. Where we came from a different perspective, where it was like a grassroots effort bubbling up, and now it's getting much more uptake from our different sectors, and they're seeing the benefit. And it's taken a lot of work and effort to demonstrate and to try to ingrain it into the way the company's working.
I'll just maybe add briefly, I think that from like a change management process, approaching it like a change management problem, one of the ways that we turn this decentralization, which can sometimes be challenging to operate in, to our advantage is to make it internally competitive. So I focus a ton on rewarding and getting recognition, creating social capital for the people that are doing this work. So the engineer who pushes to get recycled content into suture packaging, because it was a side project and something she was just passionate about, making it a huge point to get her an internal, like what we call a Standards of Leadership Award, which is a big deal. It's like a 2% of her salary, she gets recognized, it's a big deal. And going after that and getting that, building that social capital so that we can create a competitive environment of, well, what's going on over, down the street, I see that they're getting, recognized for this. You create senior leaders to say, well, hey, guess what? We're going to be doing this over here now. I want to see Earthwards recognitions coming from our products. I want to see, why aren't we making improvements here? And you start getting that competitive spirit going, which is one of the advantages of being a decentralized company, is we can ignite that competitive spirit.
Yeah, when we send out a recognition email, this new brand just received Earthwards recognition, you'll see an email go out, and then when the VPs get it, they send it around to everybody. Hey, congratulations. So people kind of get like kudos that way. Also in our internal newsletters, Keith will get articles written. We're just looking at one on a train ride up here that was put on some Neutrogena natural brand that received Earthwards recognition, how it was in their consumer newsletter, and then we put it into our broader J&J newsletter, and all that type. Like I said, there's a lot of different elements that go into it. It's not just one thing that you have to do.
So yeah, thinking about the employment side, and maybe I'll make this my last question, I think it'd be really fascinating to hear from both of you. There's a lot of people in the room who are considering careers in this industry, and just to get your thoughts on where do you see this industry in 10, 20 years, and maybe if you could play a trend forecaster, what's going to be the next maybe big thing here?
Well, I guess I'll start and let Keith go in. This is another thing we discussed also with Stu before. Sustainability isn't going to go away. Can't go away, really, if you think about it. What I mentioned earlier, as far as resource scarcity, the stresses on the earth, the growth of population, and there's just so many other forces on major corporations and even mid-sized and smaller companies too to do things this way. I mentioned the greening of the supply chain type of initiatives, which major companies, and if you're selling to anybody else, which everybody is, there's going to be that force going on. There's a whole bunch of other forces like annual shareholder resolutions is another one. So every company, major companies, gets at least a couple shareholder resolutions on sustainability or environmental issues. So if you're like us, like a company, which I'm sure all major companies, they try to manage that process. And if we hear that there's a stakeholder who's interested in something or has concerns about something, we try to talk to them up front so it doesn't become a shareholder resolution, and try to, show them what we're doing, or maybe there's misinformation or whatever, or maybe even agree to do certain things. So you got that force. You got these indexes now, stock indexes for companies like the Dow Jones Sustainability Index, the FTSE for Good Index, where we're seeing more and more pension plans or other major purchasers of stock who are looking at, I want to purchase stock from socially responsible companies. So there's this whole industry, very large industry, billions of dollars of shares of stock are being purchased based on sustainability metrics. And we pay a lot of attention to like the Dow Jones Sustainability Index. It's one of our key metrics on how we're doing regarding sustainability and making sure we stay on the Dow Jones Sustainability Index. So you got all these forces coming at you, and that's just to say that, the field of sustainability or environment, I don't see it going away. But, as far as jobs in the field, that's, there's definitely a growth in the job market, and you're seeing more and more companies starting to need specialists in this area. But I think if I was to predict, and this is just my own personal opinion, I would say that it's going to probably reach a plateau where those type of jobs, and then sustainability is going to be more like ingrained in the way you do business. I think there's always going to be a need for people like us to be driving it, to be focusing on it, to staying attuned to what's going on. extremely dynamic. I mean, if you look at sustainability, a lot of times we just think of it as an environmental issue, but it cuts across every aspect of our business. You know, how our hiring practices, our selling practices, how we treat our employees, you know, everything regarding the safety of our employees. You know, it cuts across so many different elements, and we're judged on that too by these outside groups, that it's got to be ingrained into the organization, and there's going to have to be somebody who's kind of like watching it and trying to, you know, keep on setting new goals, new targets, steering the company in the right direction, and looking ahead, you know, finding out what's the next big thing or emerging issue that could affect the company. So I think it probably will reach a plateau, but I also think that it'll be a part of a lot of people's jobs. So you might be working in marketing, and maybe you're a brand manager, but you're also going to be paying attention to sustainability, or you might be an engineer in manufacturing, and you're going to be looking at, well, how can I make this process more sustainable, you know, and it'll be part of the way I do business.
Yeah, I think what I would just add is that the most important thing is when you're deciding where to go work, will that organization support your desire to work in a more sustainable manner, to create more sustainable products? Is that going to be rewarded? Is that going to be fostered? Is that going to be supported? And if it's not, that probably is the biggest indicator. And I think asking real questions, not just are you, in the interviews, asking for examples of those senior managers when you're talking to them. How have you made decisions that have impacted or lessened your products? Where have you supported your employees to gain education or awareness, or to grow in this area and increase their knowledge set? So I think that's probably arguably the most important. I think J&J is pretty clear with its credo, which is this year 70 years old. So the credo that Al mentioned, it was pretty visionary when it was written almost 70 years ago now, and it is really ingrained into the business processes, and it's something that is supported across the business. I think that's the most important. If you're working for a company that is maybe saying the right things, but not, its actions aren't backing that up, I think that's probably a bigger concern, because then you can join the organization as, in finance or marketing or communications or wherever your functional skill set interests lie, and your passions are going to be supported as you help that business become more sustainable. So.
Thank you both. So maybe at this point, I'd like just to turn it over to the audience. Does anybody have any questions for Al or Keith? Do we have a microphone? Or great.
And if you could say your name and your affiliation, please.
Okay. Sure.
Hi, my name is Kelly. I'm a master's student at the School of Forestry. Thank you very much. This has been really fascinating. I have a follow-up question about where the discussion ended, actually. Currently, you were talking about how currently having a sustainability plan and having these goals can increase market share. But Al, as you were talking about, eventually sustainability will just be a natural part of business. I'm wondering then how does sustainability add to market share, help grow market share if everyone's doing it? How do you differentiate your version of sustainability from theirs?
Yeah, so there's always going to be somebody doing it better than the competitor, or they might have better marketers. That's part of it too. Like I have this saying, I say, what good is a greener product if nobody knows about it, right? So that's why people like Keith and marketers, I mean, there's probably a decent amount of you, who are pursuing a career in marketing, are like critical. And we belong to this one organization. We go to this awesome conference every year called Sustainable Brands out in California, and it's all about how marketers can make a difference in the world by marketing sustainability. Because actually, the marketers are the key to our success, because when they start asking for these attributes in the products, we start building it that way. Everybody else listens to the marketers because they're listening to the marketplace, and that's their job. So I think there always will be, there's always going to be a differentiator in products. I mean, we're never going to get completely to that, but I think certain things will have to be part of it. I mean, you're seeing that. Look at Energy Star, right? That EPA program is probably the most widely successful program ever developed by a regulatory agency on the planet, I would say. So kudos to you, EPA. Now it's like commonplace, like, you know, almost every device. I mean, when we go in my family looking for a new refrigerator, first thing, you know, and my wife isn't in the environmental field, and she'll want to make sure it's got the Energy Star logo. That's step one before we look at anything else, other features. You know, it's got to have that in there because I want to use less energy because it's good for the environment, but also will save me money too, my electricity costs. So, you know, that's a perfect example of how that is there. But you still can differentiate a refrigerator, can't you? That has Energy Star on it. So that's probably, you know, the best example I could give you.
Thank you. I got a hand up here first.
Hi, I'm a first-year student at the business school, and I'm just curious about how cost factors into this, because I imagine that some of these changes to provide better sustainability also require perhaps a change in cost of your product. So when you're faced with proposing that change, how does that factor in, and how are those decisions made? Especially in the medical device industry, such a significant change could mean a reapproval from the FDA and so forth. So how do you kind of manage that change to make sure that it's still within your cost profile?
Yeah, sure. So what I'll say is that our customers, so where I think maybe the thinking was in consumer, even as recently as 2 or 3 years ago, is the consumer would pay a premium for a more sustainable product. The numbers batted around 10. I remember consultants telling me 10 or 15%, right? Turns out, you know who won't pay more for sustainability? Hospitals. 0. Cost premium of, there are some extreme exceptions. So there are a couple of hospitals who are paying a very slight premium for DEHP-free intravenous systems for their NICUs, right? So they'll pay, because of the highly vulnerable patient base there, they'll pay for a slight premium. But that is the rare exception. So what we've done, actually one of the biggest areas of Earthwards sort of mining that we do is with teams working on cost improvement projects. So how do we take cost out of our system? Because if you're taking cost out of a product, typically you're going to be making it more sustainable. So it's a win-win. So what we do is we try to embed it early. There's sort of a twofold answer here. Embed it early in the process, because that's when you can have the impacts at the lowest cost impact. The product's already approved and on the market, especially in medical device, to your point, getting it reapproved, like it's a non-starter, almost always. But if you can build it in early enough, you can find a way to build it in often and think broadly. You can often save money. You can find ways to deliver cost synergies or to deliver cost improvements. And then on redesign, we're constantly looking at how can we improve the cost base for our products. And there's teams, CIP teams, that are tasked with delivering millions of dollars of savings through raw material savings. We partner with them to find ways to save there too. And then what we do is we dimensionalize not only the raw material savings, but also the environmental benefits to us and to our customers. So, answer the question? Yeah.
I was given a note here also to let our online participants know that they can write in questions in the chat box, and we'll respond to those. Okay. So you had a question too.
Hi, my name is Sarah Smith. I'm a joint degree student with the School of Management and School of Forestry. You talked a lot about designing Earthwards, how it works. Can you talk about the decision to make it a completely internal program as opposed to using an external standard that might have more recognition from consumers or others who are judging your products and how sustainable they are? It seems to me there are a lot of trade-offs there and how you would design that program and the benefits of going one way or the other.
Yeah, so I'll start and you can fill in the gaps. First of all, there is no external program that we felt that we could adopt to be when we started Earthwards, and I still would agree with that statement. What we do is we do evaluate eco logos that could be put onto products. Like we have some products that are in the Scandinavian region where we use the Nordic swan on it. We have some business units that are looking at cradle to cradle as an eco logo. We use the FSC certified paper as an eco logo. So it depends on it. But to your point that consumers would recognize now, I also in my book I do a section on eco logos, and there's been some research. There's like 400 different eco logos out there, so there's a lot of mass confusion out there. And if you look at the U.S. population, the last study that I saw, there's only 3 eco logos that are recognized by 50% or higher of the population. Could you guess which ones they are? The recycling symbol, which is a lame echo logo, if you call it that. The Energy Star one, which is really, really high, which is amazing, which goes back to what I said earlier. And then the USDA certified organic. And then everybody else is like, the next best one is like 44%. So there isn't really anything out there. So it really depends. So what we've kind of, I think, concluded, right, Keith, is that the main thing, like we don't market or buy this product because it's Earthwards recognized. We market it on what has improved. So what do our customers really want to know? Across the board, all three of our sectors, they want to know that we're paying attention to these issues. They want to know that they're getting a high quality product and they can trust what they're getting. And the way that we demonstrate that, at least in the sustainability area, is having some scientifically based, third party approved claims that we're saying. This product is, 100% BCR, or this product, the packaging is 100% FSC certified paperboard, or this product is free of PVC, whatever. This is a RoHS compliant product years before it's required to be. Those type of statements are the things that, and actually if you want to see a really good example, I think, of green marketing, is if you go to our Neutrogena Naturals website, I think they do an excellent job of green marketing, because they're hitting what's important to the customer. They want to have a natural product that they could trust, from a brand that they can trust. And they actually, the claims and the statements that they make are the type of things that the consumer is interested in. It's like free of parabens and things like that. There's a cause marketing relationship with the Nature Conservancy. So whenever you buy that product, you're helping to support clean water projects. So it ties into what the consumer is looking for. So it's a long answer to say there is none out there, but it was good to give you a little bit background, I think, so you could see what we thought about that. It would have been great if there was just something that we could say, let's do this. And we're still looking for even eco logos that we could partner with to say, oh, once this product gets Earthwards recognized, it automatically gets this eco logo. Well, we haven't found anything yet, but it really depends. I don't know, Keith, is there anything you want to add?
No, I mean, I just think that by making it internally focused, there's also a lot of risk with the new FCC Green Guides regulations around self-certification, around eco logos. We don't want to add to that confusion. Al's example of Neutrogena Naturals, all those products are Earthwards recognized. Earthwards played a huge role, the process in terms of developing those products from the beginning, building it in from the very start on what was in the formulations, what were the claims that we were going to make. But yet nowhere on Neutrogena Naturals' website will you see that they're Earthwards recognized. Now, where you will see it is when they go to sell a new item into Walmart. There's a slide in there about how the product is Earthwards recognized and where are the improvements: packaging reductions, formulation, impacts once it goes down the drain, so that it's having less of an impact on waterways, those sorts of things. So Earthwards is coming up in those customer conversations, again, B2B versus B2C.
Mm-hmm. Good.
We actually have a question online,
All right.
and it's, how do you see this playing out in developing countries where you're trying to build brands?
I'll let you, because we got a great
Sure,
example.
yeah, there's
a couple products.
So Earthwards recognized products are actually relatively split between our developing and our developed markets. We're getting quite a few from the US and Europe, but we're also getting a lot of great innovation coming out of the developing markets. Specifically, there's a line of surgical devices that has Earthwards recognition that's developed specifically for the developing markets, for those sort of secondary S2 markets, where we can't, cost won't allow a $300 stapler. Like, it's just not possible for that to function in that marketplace. They designed a product that can be depending on the product, it's somewhere between 90 and 95% of the product is reused up to 200 times and can be effectively steam sterilized on site in hospitals with other devices. And they sell just a cartridge that is that's the sort of the single-use component of it. So you're reducing material use by almost 95%, reducing cost. Now there's trade-offs. Those devices, because they have to be designed to withstand sterilization 200 times, you're making trade-offs. It's heavier, it's harder to fire. These are trade-offs that most Western doctors aren't willing to make at this point. Most developing countries aren't willing to make. But for that secondary market where the alternative is hand suture, and failure rate on hand suture in some of these procedures is 2%, and when you get failure, it can often lead to infection and death. If you can cut that failure rate to 0.5%, which is what it's doing, you're saving literally thousands of people's lives every year, which is tremendous. And we have a great innovation center just outside of Shanghai where our medical device teams are working with the physicians in those secondary markets in China and India to develop those tools that are typically making sort of quantum leaps in terms of how you deliver the basic needs of the customer, but do it at a fraction, a 10th, a 20th, a 30th of the cost of what we do it for in Europe or the US. So, anything to add?
That was great. That's what I was thinking.
Yeah.
Hi, Alex Pasalopoulos at the School of Management. Along the same lines, I was curious if you could speak to the dynamics of what you do and how that plays out, marketing products or just doing marketing in different countries.
Sure. Anything in particular?
I mean, sure. So you meant most of the examples, I guess, were about the U.S. market, but then you mentioned one of the Echo logos in a Scandinavian market, and I guess I'm curious about how your jobs are affected by the customer base in different countries or the landscape of sustainability marketing in a different place like Canada, where I'm from.
Sure. Okay. Yeah. No, and I think it's a great question. I think it's one where you have to meet the needs of the local region. So whether it's China ROS compliance to meet regulatory needs there, or it's the Nordic Swan logo in Scandinavia. We have a great baby brand in France called Le Petit Marseillais. J&J is the leader in baby products in every market in the world, and if it's not Johnson's, we have bought the leader. So in France, we bought the leader. We just went and bought them. But Le Petit Marseillais is a great brand if you're from France or have ever been there. And we've worked with that brand because it's very fruit and fragrance based. So for them, they use a lot of natural extracts. So they've actually gone and created a campaign with an NGO to protect sort of heirloom varietals of orchards, of peaches and tomatoes and different plant extracts that go into their products as a way to demonstrate to their customers that they're sort of living the promise of protecting this natural heritage of these fruit and fragrance essences that are sort of core to their equity. So it is about adapting what's important to the local audience, what's important to them, and figuring that out and translating that. And then sharing those best practices, right? So Nordic Swan is a great way that we were able to share that case study and work with our OCD business, which is Orthoclinical Diagnostics, who makes blood analyzers. We helped them to identify Green Guard, which is indoor air quality certification, as something that was relevant for hospitals, because those lab techs are working in these lab spaces in hospitals, and they're very confined sometimes, and indoor air quality and indoor noise is an issue. And Green Guard was a certification that was relevant for a number of hospitals. So we're able to identify them and match them up, and I think they actually just publicly announced that they were able to get Green Guard certification on one of their Earthwards recognized products. So I hope that answers that. Cool.
Maybe we have time for one last question.
Well, so we have one online, if that's all right. Al mentioned employees wanting meaningful work as a growing driver for sustainability initiatives. Has anyone measured this driver? And are there examples of this driver impacting strategy?
I don't know about the measurement, maybe you know, Keith, but I will tell you, so I had this opportunity last year, thanks to Keith, to get, maybe it was earlier this year, I don't remember. Anyway, we do this big recruiting event. It's called the J&J Global Invitational, where they invite the best and brightest that are considering joining J&J out there, and they kind of wine and dine them and try to encourage them to join our company. And we had a session on sustainability, which I did. Thanks to Keith, I did like 8 in one day, I think. 8 one-hour sessions. I said, I had to buy lozenges just to make it to the end of the day. But the students are extremely interested in this. We see that coming up now. I don't know if we have hard data, but I mean, it's just like a known fact that students are interested in doing meaningful work for a company that's doing meaningful things and that operate in a socially responsible manner. And that those sessions were very well attended. There were students from all over the world, and they were asking questions, and they're very much attuned. And that time, that air time is precious, because we're trying to sell J&J to these students. So that's probably the freshest indicator, that I could give in that regards. And I know our recruiting also uses our sustainability brochures to help, show students what, or prospective, employees what we're all about and how this is meaningful, and to show that we actually pay attention to these things and get recognized for it by third parties. I don't know if you know any.
Yeah, I can. I know Net Impact does a number of studies every year that sort of dimensionalize this and the impact that it has on recruiting. And our recruiting group does pay attention to a lot of the studies that Net Impact puts out. We have a small presence at the Net Impact conference every year. So I know Net Impact does have some studies online that show that, as well as I'm just not remembering what the numbers are right off the top of my head.
I'm sure you guys have inspired lots of people here to also think about J&J.
Right.
So please join me again in thanking Keith and Al for donating their time and everything with us.